Hi, hello, I'm Dami. Thank you for clicking on my channel. We have books, books, a lot of books. We have 8 books here, and you can see from the title, I have curated perfectly 8 books that I believe will get out of a reading slump. Books from my shelf. That's so most of these books I did read when I was in a bit of a yeah, like a higgy haga, like a and yeah, they pulled me out of it. So what I have here today is I've separated these books into what I think are their different undertones, and even though they might fall under some sort of umbrella, I've separated them into what I think they are to me and what they could to someone else. And I will warn you, as we keep going down this aisle, as you can probably see the books, it gets progressively darker. So that's a slight trigger warning and a brief disclaimer. So Liz is in high school, and some guy that she knew from when she was younger moves back to town and moves back to school, and she really likes him, right? But her neighbor Wes, who like in the beginning you meet them, they have this sort of like child banter where they fight for parking space, and if someone can't park in front of the street, they have to park at the end of the street, and they go back and forth with that. So it's a lot of like you know you get that kind of you get that kind of drama. Anyway, so she realizes that the guy she really likes is basically friends with Wes, who's her neighbor. So she tells Wes that, look, you have to help me get with this guy. I really like him. I think he's the one. Yada yada yada. And the background that Liz has, so she used to watch romance movies with her mom all the time, and she references. So every chapter in this book, I believe, starts with. I'm looking for like just any chapter at all. So every chapter in this book starts with like a romance, like a quote from a romance movie. So example, chapter 5, just because she likes the same bizarro crap you do doesn't mean she's your soulmate, from 500 days of summer. So every chapter starts with like a romance quote, and even at the same time, while Liz is doing something, or in particular moments and scenes she references music, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can imagine da 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 playing right now. Yeah, yeah. And for those who don't know, this is the basic help me get with this guy trope, but then you actually get with the guy who you ask for help, right? That's not a spoiler. Like, it's just from the name, like from the synopsis at the back, you can predict what this book is about. It's very easy to go through. It's very quick to go through, and you know where the book is ending. You know how it's going to end, but you just want to see it through because these characters are so sweet. They're adorable. Now, I wouldn't say you're going to care for them as much, but it's just very. It's like a breath of fresh air. I remember reading this after I had read, I think it was a fantasy or it was something heavy, and I just wanted to read something light. And this was the book I chose, and I can't wait to revisit this book again because I feel like I will read it again. And there are like some songs on my playlist now that I got from this book, and just some moments in this book, and it's I'm just thinking of a moment. So there's a particular moment in this book where Liz and Wes are in their houses. They're like, again, they're neighbors. Like, think of Betty Andrews and Archie, Betty Cooper and Archie Andrews, like window to window, and they're just talking about something. It's like, oh, what are you watching? Oh, let's watch it together. It was so sweet, and the music I was listening to at the time, it's adorable. It's fucking sweet, and I recommend it. It's so quick to go through. There's nothing. You're not. I mean, you're not like racking your brain for like any piece of information. So I highly recommend that you go through this. Love in the Time of Serial Killers. Now, again, this is another book where we're gonna run through it quick. Number one, it has to do with neighbors again, and it's just nothing so heavy and so difficult to follow through. So basically, this girl, her dad died, and she has to move back to town to pack up his house and sell it. But while she's there, I think she's in postgraduate school, so she's writing a thesis or something, and she's a fan of serial killers, and she references almost like the past girl Liz. She references serial killers and some documentaries in some particular moments because beginning of the book, she sees her neighbor, her dad's neighbor, her neighbor, and he's like, it's at night, he's cleaning up some liquid on his body that looks like blood, and she's like, oh my gosh, am I living to a serial killer? So she's trying to like investigate, quote unquote, and see what he's up to, and he just follow that narrative while she's also trying to sell her dad's house. She reels her brother in, her brother who is also engaged as well, and you get to just see like the side romance from there as well, and how sweet him and his girlfriend are, my fiance. And yeah, again, same thing. You can see where this is going. She realizes that the serial killer, quote unquote, is not a serial killer, and she starts to see him for who he is. And then from one thing starts to another, he like helps. At the beginning of the book, he basically because she comes to her dad's place with a sofa or something, something heavy. I think a sofa or a wardrobe, either or. And she's like, she, got there later at night. She's like, I'm going to get in the morning. And she wakes up in the morning and he had helped her carry it up the stairs and just put it in front of the house and, just stuff like that. So there's like slight nudges to just how sweet and adorable he is as well as a person. And then when she starts to get to know him and she's getting, connected to him and they're starting to have like moments, it's just, it's just sweet, it's adorable. And again, like the other one, once you see where this book is going, so you can predict it most likely, you're gonna run through it quickly. I read this. So I had read a book called All My Rage by Sabata Hair, which was heavy hitting in most ways, and it made me cry like at night. So I just needed, and this was last December, and I needed something to just give me some relief. And this was that book. It's really, really nice, really adorable, and I recommend it. Again, it will get over a reading slump. Okay, two for two. Let's go for three. Number three, Honey and Spice by Bully Blah, 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 blah. This is the first romance book I read after a long time because I'm not a romance reader in particular. But I think now that I'm older and I'm reading a lot of heavier hitting topics, I always need like a little, you know, decluttered, like something just easy to go through my brain. So now this, in comparison to the other two, it's not as easy going, and I'll explain because I know you're probably thinking, then why is it like, helping me get through my reading slump, right? So basically, this book is based in university, and you open this book with this girl who's like basically breaking up with a hookup, which like guys, let's talk about it. Those are like one of the heavier or like heartbreaking hookups. So she's breaking up with one of her regular hookups and she's leaving his apartment in college, and then she sees someone else walk by and she's like, oh my gosh, he's so fine, but she doesn't think too much about it. Now this girl hosts a radio station on campus with her best friend. Her best friend is like the producer or something, or editor, and what they do is they just talk about men and they talk about like scenarios and relationships happening on campus. Now what happens is a lot of girls are talking about this one guy and everyone is like wondering if she's basically wondering if they're all talking about the same guy, but all the ladies are talking about how shitty he is and how like he plays them or whatever. But then she goes to a party, meets the same guy that she saw when she was, leaving her hookup's apartment, and they get to talking and like he's a bit flirtatious, and then she realizes from gossip, people talking about her at the party that that's the same guy that they were talking shit about on the radio station. Now, the hookup guy that she broke up with is being a dick at this party. So this guy, this player basically steps up, helps her, and she's like, I didn't ask for your help. And a friendship gets budding. Something just happens. They're like frenemies, basically. Now, he has the same academic advisor as she does, and she's basically working on something for like a radio submission that she wants to, transfer to in New York. And he's working on like a documentary. So they say, how about we fake dates? See where that goes, use it for our assignment, and when we're done, we break it off. This is a fake dating trip. And once you can just get through what the book is setting up for you in the first couple chapters, the rest is, I won't say predictable because this book has a lot of like subplots and like, family, I won't say family drama, but like family context that's really, really heart wrenching and warming at the same time. Because as much as those are there to run through quickly, there's really nothing so deep to think about. This is almost the same way, except it's a lot of like real life scenarios, and it's also like Kiki, who's the main character, she's Nigerian as well. So there's lots of Nigerian undertones and just British slangs, and it's a lot more cultured and a lot more rooted in life, and it's not so basic like the other two that I mentioned. This felt a lot of like real life reading. It's a lot of real world references, and just it felt really grand. And at university, so I could really relate with that as well. And it's Nigerian. It's really, really good. I recommend this. It's really, really good. And again, the other two, you get through those quickly. But this is all just you want to relate a lot more with the characters, because a lot of the characters in this book are not so one-dimensional as like a basic romance book might give you. So this is very well fleshed out, and the romance almost feels like an undertone with everything else going on. It's not so heavy, I promise, but it's really, really good. Okay, those are the first three books that I wanted to put in one category as romance. As much as the last one is a bit on the brink of this second category, it's romance, and everything else. So those are the first three for the first category. Now, on to the second category. I'm gonna call this the romance undertone category for various reasons. I'll explain. So Josiah and Yasmin, they're separated, right? And they experience some sort of loss in their family. Now they co-own a restaurant and they also co-parent at the same time. So you can understand that like they still basically see each other like they're married. They're probably not sleeping together in the same house on the same bed, but they're seeing each other every other day, like dropping off kids or picking up kids or like having a business meeting for the restaurant that they own. And you find out like towards the ending of this book that they're also trying to expand their restaurant. So that also kicks in as well. Now I will say one thing I really enjoyed about this book is that like you read from both perspectives. And I just think that's really delicious. Now, Debbie gets involved with the husband, well, the father, the husband, and you then it then takes you back to when they had lost the person they lost in their family and what the emotions were and how their marriage just like dissolved. And at the same time, while you're going through like a flashback, when you're reading from Yasmin, the other person's perspective as well, you're seeing how their romance is then kind of like reignited and like kicking off again in the present. And look, I can't say too much. I've talked about this book before on my page. You could go back and check it out. Like I gave like a very detailed explanation. I talked about it like I wrote notes. That's how good it is. It's so good. And look, I don't want to say anything else. Pick up this book. You won't regret it. I promise you. If you don't read anything else on this list, pick up this fucking book. It's fucking sensational. Please, like I'm begging you, pick it up. And there's also apparently a movie adaptation being in the works or something with I think Peacock or so or HBO. I don't know. But it's amazing. It's a really, really good book. And I know this will like I remember reading this book on my couch on a work and school night and I just couldn't drop it. Like my discipline, which I really don't have, I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. Yes, absolutely. Okay, next we have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, this author, her reputation precedes her. You probably know who this is, so I really don't need to waste much time. And this book is very famous, so a lot of people might have already read this book. But I think one thing I sort of recognize about this author is she writes in a very bingeable way. And her books are just really easy to go through. Now, most of them are like, heavy in plots and they have a lot of very interesting and trigger warning undertones. So, that's recognized. That's why I put this book in the second category as well, because most people call this book a romance. I don't know where I stand with what I would call it, but I don't really think I would call it a romance. Maybe there are some slight romance undertones, but there's a lot more going on in this book. So it follows Lily, and Lily Bloom. She owns a flower shop. She just moved, I think, to a new town basically, and she falls in love with this surgeon that she meets on the rooftop in the beginning of the book, and their relationship gets a bit abusive. But then she's also having flashbacks because she just moved, right? So she's unpacking. She finds her childhood diary, and she's reading about how there was a guy, like a neighbor she had when she was in high school that she really had a thing for, and they're going back and forth with this new guy and the old guy, and then off the whim she goes to a restaurant with her current, well, he becomes her fiance and his family and her mom, and she meets the guy that she wrote about when she was in high school, who she basically had a thing for, and the book just goes back and forth from there. There's a lot more going on in this book, but I will say, off what I can really remember, I read this book last year. It's very easy to go through. It's a bit heavy. It's not for everyone. I will say, I promise you, it's not for everyone. It's a bit heavy. Now, if I would put this book and Before I Let Go together, I would say pick up Before I Let Go first, right? But Before I Let Go goes through some sort of loss, and this goes through some sort of physical abuse and emotional abuse. So you just have to kind of pick your poison almost. That's grief, and this is a lot more heavier. So that's why I paired those together. They both will get you to a release up because it's very engaging and very interesting to go through, but you have to just decide which one you would rather sit down and let into your mental space, basically. Again, this is a very popular book. You probably have read it, and if you haven't, yeah, I don't want to, spoil you by telling what it's about. It's yeah. Verity. Now, this was I remember where I was when I finished this book. I was at work and I was standing. Let me tell you guys something. This book, this book is funny. This book is so hilarious. Okay, so basically, one of the main characters in the book is called Verity. She's an author, and she went through an accident, but unfortunately, she had a book deal that she needed to finish. So her husband goes to hire a ghostwriter to come write for Verity. Now, what happens is this ghostwriter is actually going through some sort of life changes. Her grandma or her mom just died, so she's moving out of her apartment and trying to find somewhere else to live. But in interim, the husband of Bertie says, "How about you come stay with us while you're writing the book? You're gonna get paid heavily a handsome check, so you can, figure out where to live while you're still writing the book, and you can just move there when you're done. So she moves into Verity's house, and while she's starting to write Verity's book, she's trying to like see if she could get a glimpse of whatever Verity was writing about the new book she wanted to write. And she finds Verity's manuscript, which is some sort of diary, basically. And Verity is giving an account of what had happened from when she met her husband to when she had children. And she lost two of her children. So she had twins and she has a boy. Or I think she had four. But let's just say two. She lost two of her kids in different scenarios. And she talks about how Verity now was talking in the manuscript about how she resented her kids because she felt like her husband was giving a lot more love to the kids than to her. It's very weird, very creepy. And the ghost author, whose name skips my mind right now, stopped feeling sorry for Verity because Verity was like in a coma, she was a vegetable. And she was just like, wait, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Why is she saying so many things about her kids? Why is she talking like in resentment for her kids? And why is she, basically sexualizing her husband? And there are some cases where Verity is a bit morally bankrupt, but it's based on your own conscience. And it then leads the ghost author to believe that maybe Verity is actually not sick and maybe she's actually the cause of her own dilemma, right? Now, she's still trying to write this book that she's saying she's going to stop reading the manuscript. She finishes the manuscript either way, and she's still trying to write this book. But then things get heated. She falls in like and in bed with Verity's husband. And there are some creepy undertones in this book where I'll give you like two examples. So there's one moment where the ghost author is having sex with Verity's husband in like the living room, and she swears she sees Verity on the steps, and she tells the other like, "Oh my god, she's right there!" But then Verity runs back to her bedroom. That was so it's funny and creepy at the same time. And the second one is they have a son who swears that like Verity plays catch with him when he's in her room, because he's probably going to say hi to mom or good night to mom, and like he says they always play catch, but it sounds physically impossible because Betsy always has the nurse coming to help her, and the nurse is really who we need to investigate because they don't really go into the nurse as much. But with everything else that happened in this book, I really want to know like what was the nurse on about, like what was her story. But that's for another day. But yeah, I just go through the book. You see what the ghost author is basically trying to navigate through after reading Versy's manuscript, and you try to see who the villain really is in this book. It's a very engaging book. It's quick to get through. Everything has been laid out for you once you're reading the book. You get to know everything, you know, constantly in each chapter. It keeps you gripped. And yeah, this is very quick to get through. It's not really long as well. I recommend. Second book in this third category, the thrilling category, is The Silent Patient. You've probably seen this book as well. Now, this was the first. This was actually a book that brought me out of like a year's reading slump. Yeah, I think. Yeah, this was. Yeah, either this or something else I recommended, but one of these books. Anyway, this book brought me out of a reading slump. I remember because I went to Target and I picked it up, and the person that was beside me was like, "Oh yeah, I've read this book and it's really really good. Pick it up." So I picked it up. Now I will say I have a lot of questions and judgments about this book, but the plots and the writing and the resolution is a bit satisfactory when you just get to the whole book. Basically, what happens is this woman who's a painter kills her husband and she's sent to like an insane asylum basically, and she just doesn't speak to anyone. She never talks. So there's a psychotherapist or a therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist, either or, that's trying to investigate what's going on with this person and why she has been mute ever since her husband dies. And he's trying to research, and you just go through the investigative process with him, and he's trying to ask the patient here questions anytime he can see her. And he also gets a job at where she's actually admitted to so he can talk to her more and get into her mind, and nothing ever seems to work until you get to the end of this book and you're like, oh. So the ending of this book, I have questions. But just getting to the book, 'cause I will say, before, knowing what happens at the end, while I was reading the book, I was very curious to be like, what the fuck actually happened, and like, how are we going to resolve this? Like, how does this book end? Like, how does he get answers? Does anything make sense? Do we just know what happened? That's what this book does to you, and I think that's what's will get. It just keeps your brain working to just be like, what's going on? Like, how what's like, and it's the same thing with Verity as well, which is why I paired these two books together, because while reading these books, you're like, okay, but how? And then you find out the how, you're like, okay, when? And it's like, okay, is that possible? It's just so many questions left. Like, why it's really good. So yeah, again, I have questions, I have judgments, but good job, good job, good job. Alrighty, last on our list, we have a memoir. I'm glad my mom died. Now I'm going to put this in a separate category because it's a memoir and it's dramatic, it's tragic, and it's comedic at the same time. For those of you who do not know who Jeanette McCurdy is, she's Jeanette McCurdy from Simon Katz, iCarly, Nickelodeon, and wherever. Now, I will say I would do a better job recommending this book to people who don't know who the author is, because when I was growing up, I didn't have the privilege of watching Nickelodeon. It was either like the cable my grandma paid, I could only watch like Cartoon Network and something else that was in Nickelodeon. So I didn't really watch the show, but I just knew her because of reputation. And basically, she gives an account of how she was with her mother when she was young to when she was growing up, how her mom would like take on auditions, and you basically just read through the lenses of Janet when she was a child, when she grew up, and how her mom just made her do things for her self satisfaction and not really Jeanette's self interest. Now, did it work out in the end? It's an open question, right? But you just read. Now, I will say you're reading about two people, Jeanette's point of view, but you're really, really reading about her mom. And you're seeing how her mom is flawed in so many ways, but you're left wondering, huh, was she just being a mom? Was she just being, kind? Was she just whatever? We'll say that one good job about this book is with the way it's written, it's engaging, it's funny in some ways, it's very humorous, and it's so detailed, but not like when you're reading something that's so detailed it's boring. No, this gives you so much context that your imagination just helps you fill in the blanks, and it's amazing. And obviously, you get to some points where the timestamps just work from themselves. Like when Jeanette starts working like Harley and she works in Sam and Cat, and then you find you're reading about some other famous people, and it's like, oh, I remember when this happened like on the internet. It helps up with that as well. But this will get you about the stuff. I read this book last year. I finished this in December. I finished it like I think on Christmas Eve on the toilet seats. Yeah, I was taking a shit. Amazing book. Amazing, amazing, amazing book. Honestly, if I could pick, if you guys would not read any of their books, but if you read this one and Before I Let Go, I would be happy. Because I think I can vouch for those two books more than any other book. I can vouch for those two authors more than anyone else. But Jeanette does a really, really good job. She wrote this book perfectly. And I hear that the audiobook has been a lot better, which I wish I listened to that before I read the book, but I'll probably revisit it sometime in the future. But yeah, it's an amazing book, and it's I mean, what else can I say? It's pick this up. You don't pick anything else up. It's yeah, perfect, perfect, perfect. And with that, people, we are done with the video. I have recommended 8 books. It's 8 books, right? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Yeah, 8. And remember, we had categories. We had the memoir, which is a separate category. We had the thrillers, which is the third category. We had the romance undertones. Those are the books where there's romance, but there's a lot more shit going on. That romance is not as important. That's the second category. And then we had. Now I will say this is on the fence. It's on the fence, but I stuck this book in the predictable. This is on the fence, but I will say I stuck this book in the predictable romance just because, yeah, just because it's not really going to fit in with those ones because those are a lot more heavier. And we have the predictable romance books. Yep, that's it. That's the video. I enjoyed all these books. And I feel like anyone who got into this video, you're going to pick up at least 2. And if it's going to be any 2, it's going to be, I hope, pick up Before I Let Go and I'm Glad My Mom Died. If you don't pick anything else up, they're fucking amazing. And maybe Honey and Spice, but like if you don't pick anything else up, Before I Let Go and I'm Glad My Mom Died. I'm rambling now, but thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you find something you like. And if you don't, come back in another video where I'm recommending more books. I'm in Dami, and this is my channel. And hope to see you sometime in another video. There's so many bugs outside, it's weird. But yeah, thank you.